Welcome to 10 Minute History, where the past happens fast. I'm your host, Taylor Smith. Joining me today is Professor Matthew Brown, Professor of African Cultural Studies at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So, I'm kind of aware of what we're talking about, but to catch our listeners up, what are we talking about on the show today?
Nollywood, Nigeria's film industry.
Nollywood. Okay, now, one of the articles that you sent me in preparation of our conversation today mentioned this as one of the most prolific film industries in the world. So how have I never heard of this until I got a chance to see your research?
Well, Nigeria's film industry, which started in the early 1990s and became known as Nollywood around 2002, it has been for most of its time a very low-budget film industry, distributed almost entirely through physical media, things like VHS and BCD, and those things just haven't traveled to and made it onto the screens of theaters, cinemas around the world until very recently.
And so what kind of films define Nollywood then? What kind of films is this industry producing?
It's producing just about any kind of film you can imagine.
Okay.
But so the main genres that you'll find if you were to go shopping for films in the Nigerian market would be romances or family films. Many of them deal with couples coming together or couples who live together, have children, sorting out various aspects of family life.
Okay.
But then there are also many comedies, many really successful comedians who are known by the famous characters they play, sort of like your Laurel and Hardys or Abbott and Costello.
Oh, okay.
Who make all kinds of fascinating comedies. Then you'll also find films coming out of Nollywood that people in the industry call epics, and by that they mean films set in the pre-colonial past.
Huh,
So
okay.
there's a whole slew of films where there are no cars, no suits and ties, no markers of modernity of any kind. They tend to be filmed in villages somewhere, and the costumes are, carefully designed, and they will depict very sort of modern issues, again, romances, perhaps, or political intrigue, but the big issue in those films is to sort of explore them through the idioms of the various cultures that have existed in Nigeria for millennia. And then one of the things that Nollywood has really become known for, according to scholars, is films that really deal with wealth and poverty.
Huh.
Nigeria is an oil-producing nation.
Okay.
There is fabulous wealth there in some places, but there's also terrible poverty in many places. And an entire genre of films has cropped up to kind of deal with the fabulousness of wealth that we call money magic films.
Oh.
And they tend to depict various occult means by which fabulous wealth could be produced. A sort of commentary on the grossness and also the sort of unbelievability of the kind of wealth that the global oil trade can produce.
Okay. So this is a very well-developed, complex, sounds like very thoughtfully crafted film industry. How did Nollywood come to be what it is today? What were some of the important beats in Nollywood's history that we need to understand?
Well, Nigeria became an independent nation in 1960, and from 1960 up through the early 1990s, only about 100 films were made in Nigeria at all. And that has a lot to do with issues of technology and the means to use that technology. So celluloid is just a really capital-intensive medium to work with. You need film stock, you need big bulky cameras and lenses that you have to keep very clean.
Yeah.
And if you are able to record information onto that film stock, it needs to be developed through a chemical process. And there has never been a real facility in Nigeria to develop film.
Huh.
So that means that you have to send the film abroad, then you might need to go to that place to do the editing, etc. So films could only be made if somebody really was able to scrape together enough capital to do it, or if government intervened somehow.
Oh, okay.
During that same period, however, the Nigerian government did invest pretty heavily in television. And there were television stations on the ground in Nigeria the day it became an independent country. And over the next couple of decades, the Nigerian state-run television bureaucracy became the biggest in all of Africa.
Oh, wow.
So by the late 1980s, there are many people in Nigeria who have television, and there's a new kind of technology coming online, video technology. There are sort of new things appearing in the markets, people who can get often pirated copies, but copies nonetheless of, Pretty Woman, any Hollywood film that was popular in late 80s, early 90s, as well as Indian films, Hong Kong films, things from anywhere. And at some point, some intrepid entrepreneurs realized that perhaps they could use this video technology to make feature-length films and then sell those films in the marketplace rather than these pirated films from other places.
Oh.
And the first film to really capture people's attention and to prove that there was really a possibility to make profit doing this came out in 1992. It was called Living in Bondage, and we often cite it as the first ever Nollywood film.
Okay. So it's these developments in technology and this local entrepreneurship that kind of gives birth to this industry that is now... I mean, how big an industry are we talking here compared to something like a Hollywood or a Bollywood?
Well, UNESCO gathers data on this kind of thing, and according to the UNESCO data, India is the largest film-producing country in the world.
Okay.
Something like 2,000 different titles are coming out in India every year.
Okay.
And third on the list is Hollywood in the United States.
Okay.
And Hollywood is producing something like 500 titles every year.
Huh.
But Nigeria, which has the biggest population on the African continent, somewhere around 150 to 175 million people,
Okay.
is the second most prolific filmmaking nation in the world. And at its peak, around the early 2000s, Nigeria was producing around 2,000 films every year. It quickly built a massive audience and a massive pool of expertise and a real energy, as well as celebrities and a local journalism culture and stuff all around the idea of having a big, glamorous film industry.
Okay, so we've got an industry on the rise, it seems like. So this is interesting to know about in and of itself, but to really drive home the significance of this, why is Nollywood and the history of how Nollywood came to be something that you think someone needs to know?
There's sort of two ways to think about it. One is, why would a place like Nigeria, that especially was an oil-producing country at its peak in the 70s and 80s, was actually a fairly wealthy country. The local currency was worth more than the U.S. dollar.
Wow.
Why was it unable to find a voice in world media? I think it's important to think about the ways that places like Nigeria, even when they're doing really well, are sort of cut off from other parts of the world. At the same time, being in that position where the country is cut off from other parts of the world doesn't diminish the kind of entrepreneurial spirit and the energy and the excitement of local people. And so they find ways to do things on their own. And the film industry in Nigeria is not only Nigeria's anymore. These films have become so popular that they spread across the African continent. If you go anywhere in Kenya or Zimbabwe or Tanzania, especially places that have English as their national language, they know Nollywood movies, and they know the Nollywood movie stars. And then as Africans have left the continent for the past couple of decades, they've taken these films with them. And then in some cases, the films have caught on with African diaspora audiences that date back much further than the last few decades. The slave trade diaspora has produced, of course, Black audiences all over the world. And in some cases, in places like the Caribbean, they have also taken an interest in Nollywood. So even if it's not something you see every day, it turns out that Nollywood is circulating around every corner you might turn.
So this isn't something I'm seeing every day, but if this many people are engaging with this industry, I feel like I need to get my eyes in front of it somehow. Is there some way that I can get access to some of these films stateside?
Netflix has purchased the rights for several Nollywood films, and so you can find many. If you were just to enter Nigeria or Nollywood into Netflix, you'll
Okay.
come up with several of the kind of newer Nollywood films.
If there's one film you might recommend for our listeners to check out if they want a starting place on getting into Nollywood, what might you recommend?
Well, when Nollywood was born, it needed a few faces to be able to sort of sell its products to its audience. And very recently, some of these pioneers, who are now veterans of the industry, got together and produced a film that was shown at the Toronto International Film Festival, and Netflix immediately picked it up. So it's called Lionheart, and
Okay.
it's available on Netflix. It just came out this year, and it features Pete Edochie, Nkem Owo, and Genevieve Naji, who are three of Nollywood's biggest stars, and I highly recommend it.
Okay. Sounds like a great way to get to know the industry a little bit. Well, Matt, thank you so
Yeah.
much. You have opened up a whole new realm of potential binge watching for us, as well as helped us to understand, I think, some really important history about how this pivotal movie industry came to be. Thanks so much for coming here and talking to us on 10 Minute History.
Thank you for having me on.